to somewhere, all roads lead to nowhere. After the weekend, the garbage piles up on the sidewalk, piles and piles of black, hefty bags that reek of lamb juice and potato scraps, cooked oil, and soiled napkins. Yesterday's meal is already a frozen memory, wrapped and stored for a busy day or an unexpected death. Time to start planning the next. All of your kids are coming, and the grandkids, the in-laws, your mother. Break out the cookbooks, bring open the Rolodex, arrange the pots, set the table, and hire extra help. Let's make a menu. Do you want to hear my menu? I just can't make another menu. Complain incessantly about the menu.
Complain incessantly about the menu. Mic drop.
Record drop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Is this better? Wow. I would love to hear from you. When did you realize you were a writer?
I think I was always recording things in my head, like just even as a kid. I grew up in a very loud family where you had to like fight for your chance to be heard. And I grew up in a very funny family full of a lot of characters. And I think like my earliest memory of writing wasn't physically writing at all, but it was just like taking notes of the way people around me spoke. And even though their dialect was the only dialect I knew that it was interesting. I knew that I wanted to capture it in some way. And as soon as I discovered the tools of writing, like literally in 4th grade, I had a teacher. So just to show like the power of like elementary school teachers, I had a teacher who, you know, we were writing short stories as an exercise in class, and she called me up to my surprise to read my story to the class, and it's such an innocuous moment, but it really like cemented something within me, that all of this like visualization and recording in my mind that I was doing, I could do that, and I could put that on a page in a structured way, and I could make someone feel something. And it was a very powerful moment, and it's a moment I've spoken about before, and I've actually got in touch with that teacher afterwards to thank her. And yeah, I think I'm from a family of storytellers, and I think like as Jews, a lot of us can relate to that. And I think writing was just the form that I took to most naturally.
I'm sure you get this question a lot, but when did you come up with the concept of this book, of the story of 3 sisters on Ocean Parkway in the Syrian Jewish community trying to find their way through family and love and dating and marriage?
So surprise, surprise, I'm one of 3 sisters. And
I was going to ask if it was biographical.
I do have a brother who I joke did not make it into the book because he's my favorite sibling. No, I love my sisters, and we're very close. Some might say like too close. And I grew up on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn in the Syrian Jewish community. And I think that growing up, I actually did not think that like our way of life or this story was unique at all, right? Mm-hmm. People talk about not knowing that Syrian Jews exist. I mean, not in New York, but outside of the tri-state area. And when I was growing up in the Syrian Jewish community, I didn't know one Ashkenaz Jew. Right. I thought everybody was Sephardic, and we all had these customs and these taboos, and we all spoke in this slang, which was a mix of Arabic and Hebrew. And so it wasn't until I went to college, I went to NYU, where I said to myself, okay, wait, there's something really interesting about the way that I grew up. And then, of course, like so many of the themes in the book, while they are specific to this unique community, the book is about sisterhood, and it's about mother-daughter relationships, and it's about advantageous marriage and competition between women, and it's also a celebration of a family life and Judaism. And I think these are universal themes. And I wanted to find a way to capture all of those things while at the same time spotlighting this somewhat unique and not widely known community.
I felt when I was reading the book that there were certain passages that felt, I may be projecting because I write like this, but I almost felt like they were lifted from your own diaries or from your own scribbles of observations of the community, like something directly from like certain little scenes that you would describe in the streets of Brooklyn was something that you totally saw in real life, and they just found their way into the novel. They were so vivid.
Yeah, my friends get mad at me because we'll be in a conversation, and I don't want people to be scared to like talk to me. Like, but I'll just whip out my phone, and because the way that Syrian Jews talk is so, it's like being inside of like a Martin Scorsese movie circa 19. It's a very unique, minus all like the gangster and the killing and stuff, but like it's a very unique dialect. And then of course, so I write for Tablet magazine.
Yes.
And Alana Newhouse, who's the editor-in-chief, has been like a mentor of mine for like a decade now. And I remember she said to me when I first started writing for Tablet, I was so nervous. And because I said, this is 10 years ago, and like nobody wrote about the community.
Yeah.
And I was not working on my novel yet, but I knew I wanted to eventually write a novel. And she said, she's like, what if we did, and this was before a podcast, she's like, what if we did something with like audio, where you just captured the sounds of Brooklyn. And I said, that would just sound like a lot of honking and people
cursing.
fighting with each other. But like she was onto something in the sense that if you just opened your ears to something that seemed mundane to me because I lived it, you might actually discover something really like intriguing and rich. And so that's what I started doing. I started literally just, instead of one of the sisters in the book, Nina, she spends a lot of her early 20s wanting to escape. And I related to that. I think as like a high school student, I always wanted to get out. And then once I started being more receptive to my surroundings and to really start to like take it in instead of always not passing judgment, but it's like a very common story when you grow up in like an insular place to want to like discover what's on the outside, especially as a writer or an artistic person. You always want to discover what's on the other side. And the moment I sort of dropped that illusion or some of that resentment, I feel like I was able to discover something different. I was able to like approach the story in a different way, and not from a place of resentment or wanting to get out, but from a place of, like I'm in these seemingly mundane scenes 24 hours a day, and how can I capture that in a way that feels authentic and true to this community and this way of life.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like you have to sometimes step out in order for a minute, right, to see your own community or your own world in this sort of, in the light of novelty. Yeah. Right? That's what you did kind of. So I was really blown away by the candor of your novel. I thought it was, really brave in certain ways, and you're writing about a community that is very insular and that is not very comfortable with a magnifying glass put on it. Not that any community, religious community, Jewish community loves that, but particularly this one. And I'm wondering whether there were moments of writing that felt risky to you.
There were no moments that didn't feel risky.
Okay, that's a good answer.
I think so. When I initially started writing this book, it was a collection of personal essays. And I was in grad school at the time, and I very quickly found out that I was never going to be able to finish the book. I was never going to be brave enough to sell the book or publish the book. And it wasn't going to be a very good book because I just wasn't in that place where I was able to spill my own guts onto the page in 20 personal essays and have whoever read it. It did feel like a betrayal of sorts, and I didn't want to do that. I think that when I was younger, I read a lot of books from like what we call OTD, off the derech books, right?
It was very popular at that time.
Yeah, that was like, you know, Deborah, I forget the name, Unorthodox,
Shulam, Dean.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so all of those, and I was reading these books, and while I admired parts of those books, I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. First of all, I still live in the community, and I love my community, and my kids go to the yeshiva in my community, and I'm a very active member of it. So I didn't want to write this like takedown, and I didn't want to like force myself to amplify or create unnecessary drama where there wasn't, just for the sake of writing a good memoir, which I had no business writing at 21.
Right.
And at the advice of one of my professors, he said, why don't you try writing fiction? And I was like, I've never written a real serious piece of fiction in my entire life. And he was like, just try. And he was right. The second I did that, it was like the risk sort of dulled. I was able to, the second where I didn't feel like I was like betraying anybody or like revealing too much about myself, it really opened like the creative floodgates where I was able to craft a story in a way that felt good for me and in a way that I felt would not betray my community. And then of course, like, I think there's always going to be the anxiety of people that don't even read the book and are just going to say, just by the sheer fact that you wrote about the community, they're not going to like that. And of course I was worried about that, and thank God I have a very supportive husband and family and parents and in-laws who never once told me, do not write this book. And had that not been the case, I probably wouldn't have published the book. So I consider myself incredibly lucky. But I also knew that, like in my heart of hearts, this book is ultimately like a celebration of the community, and it's a love letter to the community. So I knew that once people read it, they'd understand. And but yeah, there was many sleepless nights. Like I think I broke out in hives the night before publication. But I think to some extent, like every writer goes through a version of that, especially with their first book. There's always autobiographical elements usually to the first book. Everybody has that one story in them. But I had a really good support system, I think, behind me.
So if I may, I want to know, what did you leave out of the book?
The whole male perspective.
Okay, let's talk about that. So a lot of the book talks about the differences between men and women's perspectives, experiences in this community. Tell a little bit, for those who did not read the book and are not, in tune necessarily with the community, about what that looks like.
So this is a book about the matriarchy, right? It's a book about this mother, Sally, and her 3 daughters, Nina, Fortune, and Lucy. And it's a book essentially about her trying to marry off her 3 daughters. It's also a book about the push and pull and the friction between generations. They live with their grandmother, Sally's mother-in-law, who is Syrian refugee and very much stuck in like the old world, you know, Aleppo essentially, and she just happens to live in Brooklyn. And it's a book, I think women in the community and in a lot of Jewish communities really do carry a lot of the weight and like the family burden on their shoulders. And I think a lot of times they're not, you know, recognized for that. And that doesn't mean that there's not like, or not that doesn't mean, but I'll say that what's intriguing to me is also with all of like the love between these women and the candor between these women and the honesty, there is a level of competition, right?
The competition between, there were a lot of interesting pieces here for those who didn't read the book yet, between the young women who are not yet married, who are like fighting over the eligible men. Then there's like these scenes, you have everyone sort of shops at the same dress shop or whatever, and then there's that other shop that's the bridal dishes shop that they're always running around, exchanging things, bringing things, talking about who bought what, right? Right, I know, you're laughing. And it was so, I could feel it, I could smell the carpet of the store, it was so vivid. But a lot of the competition sort of runs around those scenes.
I mean, it really is this world where it's like the Hunger Games between the ages of like 18 and 25. And then there's like this drop off at 25 where it's like, I'm entering my 60s and I'm still not mad. And when you think about it, it's funny. And I really wanted to capture like the humor of that because it's so like,
it's very manic.
It's very manic, and there is a lot of pressure. And it's like this amazing race game of Survivor to the men, to your Nasib. And but
Nasib means destined one, or Bashert in Yiddish.
And there's this very real feeling of you don't want to let a good guy slip through your fingers. And so on one side, it is very comforting almost to know, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to register for in this store when I get married, and they have the list of all the engaged couples behind the register, and I could exchange, and it's this endless cycle of credit, and it's like, it's a very like safe and secure feeling. But then there's this other side of it where if you don't fall into those boxes and in between those lines, right? It's not easy, right? And that's why it was important for me to write the book from the three sisters' perspectives, because although there are more than three archetypes of women in the community, I really wanted to capture three very different experiences of what it's like to come of age in the community. And so if you are, 25 or 24 and not dating and not married, I think your instinct then becomes to reject the community because you feel rejected by it, right? You don't feel chosen. And so what happens there? And then on the other side of that, if you're like the middle child who's engaged, who is you're sort of the obedient daughter who does as one does and sort of like follows the well-trodden path. What happens when you start to feel some ambivalence around your relationship or some doubts start to creep in? Like, is there room for those feelings? I think sometimes it could feel like there isn't, but I like to think that there is. And my experience in the community has been that there is room for those feelings. And so, yeah, I'm sure like there are similarities in other.
A lot. I think also a lot of just even Manhattanite Jews would relate because of the scene here. You have this other really interesting theme there as well, which is really interesting. And also, obviously, there's overlays in other communities, other cultures, of the scrutiny under which young, like teenage girls face, right? And there's this one early on in the book, there's a story of, there's like another girl in the community that got drunk at a community wedding, and it was like the big scandal of the community at the time in the book. And sort of there's this discussion, and there are all these voices of everyone talking about this girl's behavior. I thought that was also a very interesting theme that's throughout the book, like how women behave or how they misbehave is a point of major scrutiny.
Yeah. I think when you're, for obvious reasons, when you're living in such a tight-knit community in one zip code, it literally sometimes feels like the trees are talking, like whispering about, what's going on. And it's that there's so many catch-22s in the community, right? Like there's so many elements of it that could be extremely positive, and then there's a flip side where it's not so positive. And I think the fact that we all know this is a community where we all know each other's business, and that can actually be fantastic if there's someone who's struggling.
It's a support network.
And it's a support network. It's a social safety net. It's all of those things. But the flip side to that, and there are 1,000 people waiting to celebrate your accomplishments and prop you up. But if you do make a mistake, especially as a young girl, until the next scandal rolls around, which it's not far. So like you should, just like hold your breath and like it's fine. Go to Israel for a few months, come back, everyone forgets. But that could also be traumatic, and I think like that was my way of like having the sisters comment on this girl who made one mistake, got too drunk at this wedding, an experience that so many young girls can relate to, and having them reflect on that moment, help them see in some way what they wanted for themselves.
Right.
And help them orient like their own identities, their own thoughts about the community in their own way.
Right. It was like a mirror to these sisters. So could you tell us a little bit about how the community responded to the actual book once it was published? There was a lot of anxiety, and it was received really well.
It was. I always say that in true Syrian fashion, if anyone had anything negative to say, it was said behind my back, which I'm so grateful for. I was serious, like in all seriousness, though, I was like very pleasantly surprised to see like just how supportive the community was. Like it seems like the entire community bought the book and shared the book. Everyone wanted to do a book club and a luncheon this summer, and it was fantastic. And of course, like I've had moments where I was sitting in a discussion and there's always someone that gets up and is like, but everyone knows us now. And I'm like, I feel like everybody knew us before
too.
But like to that, I say, I think, and I don't mean to sound cliche and to sugarcoat it, but I think that there is something very powerful about like taking control of your own narrative. I think whatever has been written about the community in the press has oftentimes like not been so positive, and it has been very stereotypical and very one-sided. And so wouldn't you want, and I hope there are more books about the community to come out. This is just one, and this is just one family story, and I don't proclaim to speak for the community at all. It's my hope that there are more sides and more narratives to come out. But I think it's a way of like taking control of your own narrative as opposed to having some journalists from the New York Times come and write about your zip code and have it be like completely
Always.
one-sided, you know.
For sure. I feel like that, yes, as a journalist, that is
Yeah,
something that...
sorry.
No, you see it all the time where we call it in journalism parachuting, where someone is parachuted into another culture or a country where they don't speak the language, right? And how, obviously, the story is never told well. And this story is so human and so loving and so obviously an insider's perspective. Another interesting point that I thought I would love to hear from you about is how religion is very much like lived, not necessarily explained in the book. It's just sort of, it felt different from, I would say, other Jewish, American, Ashkenazi novels and the way that they talk about religion. Could you explain a little bit about how you thought about writing about religion?
I think the Syrian community is more of a traditional community as opposed to like a super, I mean, we are an observant community, but in my experience, it was never so much about like being by the book or even knowing why we did the things we did. It was just the fact that we've done them for so many years.
Your grandmother did that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like my grandmother never wrote down a recipe in her life. And I'm sure this is something that we can all relate to. And it was just a pinch of this and a pinch of that and a sa of this and whatever. And there was so much like oral history and so much tradition that was just passed down. And we just like lived and breathed our history as opposed to getting into like the nitty-gritty explanations. I mean, I went to yeshiva for 16 years. I should know why we do certain things, and I do. But like a lot of the things we just do because we've always done them.
You also have the beautiful privilege of an unbroken chain.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and it's also like it's a newer community to the state. Like it's a relatively newer community to the States, right?
Yes.
Like, I think like I don't know the exact numbers, but I know like my grandparents came here in the early 1950s, and so many of the things that they were practicing in Aleppo or in Egypt that they continued here were very much like fresh in their minds. And I think a second component to that is I think that the Syrian community is a very like forward-thinking community. I think when they came here, they were very focused on building things and investing in our lives here. And I know from my own experience, like my grandfather never wanted to talk about his life in Egypt.
Wow.
I mean, we knew like bits and pieces, and he spoke Arabic and he watched like Egyptian news programs, and I lived with my grandparents growing up, so I was very much like immersed in that. But he wasn't interested in talking about the persecution or like his escape story. Like it was just about, no, we're here now, and like this is the greatest country on earth, and let's build our lives here, and we can never say anything negative about America. Like it was, so it was very much of that.
This explains a lot of why Sephardim are so positive and Ashkenazim are like, we only talk about our persecution.
Right. It's a very big difference. Like
it's like my whole identity is Holocaust trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember learning about, like, we learned about the Holocaust in school, obviously from a very young age. And we don't have anything, thank God, like that in Sephardic culture. I mean, I don't. But I always thought, like, oh, like life for us was roses in Syria. Like, why'd they ever leave? And they never spoke about it. And I think there's an organization in the community, the Sephardic Heritage Museum, that I think 10 or 15 years ago made it their mission to start chronicling these stories of escape and persecution. And it was the first time that many of these people of this generation were opening up about it.
Wow.
So that was and now we're slowly adding that to the curriculums in our yeshiva. But prior to that, it was like nothing. Yeah.
Wow. My last question to you, and then I would like to open it to the audience, is for those who are creatives in the room, whether writers or otherwise, what advice would you give them?
I think just to work on your craft every day, and then also don't be too hard on yourself about what that means. So I feel like I always used to give myself these like super unrealistic goals where, oh, you have to write 1,000 words a day. And I was not living up to my own expectations, and then I was just mad at myself. And then, you know, kind of what we were talking about before, like writing can be just opening yourself up to your day-to-day experiences and jotting down notes in your notes app on your phone. It doesn't have to be this super rigid experience. I think that creativity comes from having lived experiences and being inspired. And for me, at least, I'm not inspired sitting in a room for 8 hours a day on my computer. So I would say for any creatives, don't be too hard on yourself about what it means to work at your craft. But find a way to at least like think about your craft every day and not to lose sight of it. And also pick up a hobby. Like I started playing
What was
tennis.
yours? Okay, tennis.
And I'm a runner, and I think both of those things have really, really helped me in my writing career and just in my discipline.
Interesting, and building endurance.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Physical and mental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Any questions from the audience? Chi-Chi.
What are you working on now? What's next?
I'm working on my next novel, which is totally different from this one. But it's about a group of 40-year-old women who are in a very competitive tennis league.
Ooh.
And it's dark and it's funny, and it does have a lot of like the themes.
Where is it set and what?
It's
Location?
ambiguous.
Okay.
But they go to Boca for a large part of the book.
Okay.
Boca Raton, Florida, for anyone who's not familiar. And yeah, just to take my own advice, and I never thought that I'd be inspired to write a book about a group of 40-year-old women who take their tennis game too seriously, but then I became one of those people, and I was like, there's something here, and so that's what I'm working on.
Okay, we'll pre-order. Sharon.
Although the community is, as you said, relatively young to the United States, they did, of course, bring so many traditions of their own. There has been a certain evolution to the community. I mean, I've been familiar with it in my own life. And, you know, back in the day, you know, girls got married at 16, 17. They never went to college. And, you know, they never had any opportunity for further education. And that's very much changed now. You know, that's not the way it is. So there's been a change in that sort of thing. Where do you see, and also like the old grandmothers who were first generation Syrians who came over on the boat, they were very invested in the girls getting married right away with the right sorts of husbands and you know, that kind of thing. And that, you know, do you see a change in that? And where do you see maybe, you know, changes in the community going forward? Do you see, like, you know, we're in 2026, what do you think may change, you know, as we move forward?
I think it's twofold. I think at the same time that I do agree, like you definitely see, I mean, I seriously do not know a woman, I mean, I do, but like most women I know work. Like they do something, whether they're, and the community is extremely entrepreneurial. Like
Right.
This is something that's in our like cultural DNA. We just know how to sell stuff. And
So
yeah.
It was like that. She could sell
Yeah.
ice to the Eskimos.
It's from like, right. It's from like the Silk Road. Like it's so ingrained. I think post COVID even like you saw this boom of women just whether they're making their own like desserts or they're selling lingerie out of their basements or they're selling lab grown diamonds. I mean like literally like it's anything you want. There is a Syrian woman selling it, and it's really been its own economy. So that's been like a major change. I mean, and of course you have more women going to college and getting their master's degrees, and so many women going into special education and speech therapy and psychology. I mean, like doctors, lawyers, professional, getting the professional degrees. So that's definitely been a change. You still have, but you at the same time, you still have like most women want to get married. Like you still have 19-year-olds getting married, and like I have a niece, she's 19, and by the time she knows she's gonna be engaged soon, and I was like, that's so exciting. You're probably gonna be the first one of all your friends. They're probably so excited for your wedding. And she was like, oh no, like I've been to 6 weddings already. And I was like, really? Like, does that still, because I'm like removed from it a little bit. And she was like, oh no, like girls still get married at 19. So that hasn't changed, but I think what has changed is I think the women are way more empowered. And I think as opposed to in like my mother's time even where, they were getting married and then they were like rolling yebra and making kibbeh and filling their freezers once a week, that sort of thing doesn't exist anymore. They're way more empowered to, they're in school while they're married, or they're working towards a degree, or they're opening up their own business. So that's like the major shift that I've seen. And I've been in shul where I've heard rabbis who are like very orthodox and old school say in their sermons, like in order for the community to survive, we need women in this community to work. Like it's not sustainable anymore to have, for most families, to have a single income. And that's just like a fact. So you've seen that, and you've seen the community really like rally around like our women and like support them in any way that they can to achieve that.
Yeah. In the back. Yeah.
Nolan,
Hi.
thanks very much for coming. I'm in the middle of the book on the audio book, so
Oh,
cool.
as a writer, I don't have to say that.
It counts.
My husband tells me, he's like, I read like 100 books this year. I'm like, no, you listened to 100. No, but it is, I'll take anything I could get. Love it.
But I found it's a painting of really, like, you can tell that it's written with a lot of love for the community, and it's just so fascinating to hear. I have a lot of friends who are SY, and, hearing about their communities, like, in college or, like, post-college, growing up in New Jersey, in, like, a kind of Ashkenazi community, I was like, this is wild. I didn't know this existed in Deal. And I'm curious, like, as the community is now something like 70 plus years from like having established themselves in America, and as generations are kind of changing, growing, getting more exposure to kind of the wider Jewish world, do you find that like attitudes generally have changed around things like intermarriage, i.e. marrying Ashkenazim, or or even like Orthodox converts or things like that, or do you still find that that the community tends to kind of like keep the general mindset towards that? And do you see any kind of writings on the walls where it's like about this?
Is your husband part of the community?
Yes.
Like, born?
Born 2 blocks away from me. Like,
Did you know him growing up?
I knew of him. Yeah. What?
So you ran the grocery store next door.
Oh,
At
no,
the grocery
no,
store.
that was my boyfriend.
Oh.
No, I'm totally I'm joking. And anybody that knows Brooklyn is like, you dated Uri's son? And I'm like, it wasn't even Uri. It was Akiva's grocery, for the record. But anyways, so I definitely do see, I mean, my sister married an Ashkenaz boy from Florida, and like they're definitely, like they met on J-Date. And I remember like when they were engaged, like people would literally come up to my parents and be like, "You're so brave." Like,
That's so funny.
and like, listen, I think my parents also knew like that they also raised us in a certain way where like sometimes it's not for everyone, you know, like, and my sister, now my brother-in-law is basically Syrian. Like he totally like renounced his Ashkenaz roots, and he's like, I'm SY now. He's like, we didn't have this food in Coral Gables, Florida. And you definitely do see like more like intermarriage with Ashkenaz, Sephardic men and women. As far as like converts, that's still, I think that's one that's like pretty like rigid. But I think like just from like the dating pool is so small, and it feels like there's so many great girls, and the girls are like, you know, part of like them being more educated and more sure of themselves and what they want is that like they don't want to settle for just anything, you know, and it's and you see this like all over the world, and we're not immune to that trend. So as far as like writing on the wall goes, I do see more Ashkenaz Sephardic unions happening in the future. But it always is interesting to see someone marry into the community because it can be jarring. It's like I've had so many people who did marry, especially like women who married Syrian guys, and they're like, where was this book 7 years ago when I literally just did a Zoom the other night, and she married, the woman on the Zoom married an Egyptian Jew from Brooklyn. And she was like, this would have saved me so many arguments with my mother-in-law because I just didn't understand why she said certain things and what and you know, now she gets it 7 years later. But it's a community that abides by its own set of conduct and rules. And I think once you get past that, it is like a beautiful it's a beautiful place to live and to raise children. So I don't know if that answers your question.
You feel the beauty in the book.
Yeah.
Hi. Very nice insights, and I really appreciated hearing this. I haven't read the book yet, but I want to go back to what you said in the beginning when you started to develop your answers and your story. And what was going through my mind as I was listening to you, because you grew up in the system, okay? And it looks like you were having this battle between busting out or staying with it. You know, I just got that feeling. So I wanted to ask you this. Did you find doing this book and putting the time and effort into these thoughts and writing, was it more nostalgic for you or was it more therapeutic?
It's a great question.
Nostalgia versus therapy.
Is it a cop-out if I say both?
Balance it.
I think in the beginning, when I first started writing this book, which was, I mean, I got married at 21, and I think I was 22 at this point. So I'd been married for a year, and I was really like contending with like some of my, like it was like a hard year, you know. I was like a newlywed. I dated my husband for 3 years prior, which was like an eternity in Syrian terms, and I was like it was very therapeutic for me to be able to like get all of these thoughts and like that struggle on the page of like who I thought I would be, which was not married at 21, versus what I was in that moment, which was like really young and recently enrolled in graduate school at the new school with all of these people who thought I was crazy. Like, they were like, you're 21 and married and from Brooklyn, and I would see them, they would look under the table like, where's your skirt, where's your wig? Like they had this like vision of me of like what that meant to them. And that also like put a lot of pressure on me because I was very much like, in that stage, I'm like I hadn't made a friend in college. I like went to school, went home every day. I was in this like new relationship with my now husband that was very exciting. This is becoming therapy, by the way, right now. You should be charging me. But like I think I very much was feeling that like push and pull between what I thought I was going to end up doing, and like life had other plans for me. And at the same time, I was extremely happy in my relationship and in my marriage and in this more traditional life that I didn't envision for myself. And so it was like, why am I fighting that? So at the beginning, it was me trying to like work through all of those feelings. And then once I switched to writing from three sisters' perspectives, which in the beginning it wasn't, it was only from Fortune's perspective, the middle sister. Once I switched to the three, and then I was writing from Lucy, the youngest, who was a high school senior in the book, it became super nostalgic. Like I just had the best time. I was like remembering my days as like a high school senior in yeshiva in Brooklyn. And really like gaining a new sense of appreciation of like what life was like then. Like it was awesome, you know? And I think it was like a very therapeutic experience in the beginning. And then I think after, as I opened up the book, I definitely had like a lot of fun walking down memory lane. Then of course, like in the editing process, you have to craft your story, right? Like nobody wants to read 1,000 pages of my inner monologue. So I had to like, or maybe you do, I don't know. But like I had to really, the shaping of it was really fun because I was able to like write the characters' endings and 3 different endings in a way that you're obviously not able to do in real life. So
you got to play God.
Yeah, that's what writing is.
That's what writing
right?
is.
Yeah.
Esther, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you all for joining us. And I believe you are selling books and signing them?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So
Thank
anyone
you,
who wants
Avital.
to buy a book, please do. Thank you for joining. Please take a glass of wine and have a great night.
Thank you.
Esther's a one-woman show.
Yeah.